Hi, I'm Si, and today we're going to be doing a buyer's guide on the Honda Integra DC5. So we're going to cover things to look out for and common faults. This particular example is a facelift edition, so that gives you different headlights, different front bumper, different rear lights and a different rear bumper. What we're going to talk about is going to apply to all Integra DC5s, so don't worry. Let's get into it. So the DC5 is powered by the K20A engine, which is a flagship engine by Honda. It's an absolute screamer. One thing you want to look out for it is obviously mileage, whether it's been serviced properly, if there's any smoke in VTEC, and you want to look at all the receipts, so if it's had any engine work whatsoever, what mods have been done to it, has it ever had a turbo on it, things like that. So because the type of car a Honda Integra is, generally they've had a hard life. So things you want to look out for is if it's got any crash damage, so you want to make sure all the door shuts, bonnet shuts, panel gaps are all equal. As well as that, any signs of any damage, so you want all these to be straight and in their original paint, like this one is. Going down deeper into the car, you want to be looking at the chassis legs, if there's any indication if there's been any work there whatsoever. But on top of that, corrosion. Hondas do dissolve. So talking of corrosion, you want to be thinking where will water sit. On a Honda Integra DC5, it's generally around the seam lines and down in this chassis leg down here. So moving around the car, again looking at panel gaps, they all meet nicely, they're all uniform. As well as that, you want to be looking if there's any paint work that's obviously been done, because that's a good giveaway of any accident damage. Moving into door shuts, a trick I've got is to actually run your fingers around the edges and you can actually feel if they've been painted or not. Usually they'll have a sharp edge, unless they're a really good painter, they'll actually paint into here. But that's generally a good indication if there's been any previous damage on the car. Another corrosion point on these cars is actually back here, the same as an Evo, in this footwell. So water sits underneath the car here and actually rots through, so you want to make sure that's solid, which this one is. So carrying on with the corrosion theme, you want to be looking along here behind the side skirt, along this part of the car, because one common fix, obviously it's not a fix, is to put filler in here if there is rust. Also, these spot welds, you want to check that they haven't got any paint on them or any filler. They want to still be visible, which on this car they are. And another point you want to check is down in there. In this arch, water sits, and if the car's not cleaned properly, the salt will eat the car. You want to be constantly looking around it, see if there's any obvious signs of previous damage or repairs. If you're going to buy one of these, you want to take a friend with you ideally. So you want to make sure the car is totally cold before you start it. Get your mate to stand at the back, and when you do start it, make sure no smoke comes billowing out the exhaust, because that's a clear indication that either piston rings or valve stem seals are on their way out. So at the back of the car, you want to be moving inside. Again, looking for corrosion and any previous damage. You want to be looking around these whole sills, make sure everything feels nice, there's no sharp edges, all the original seal is still there, which is on this one. And then deeper into the car, you want to be looking underneath the mats. Again, any corrosion. A common spot where these go is actually where this boot carpet rubs on the metal, and then moisture's held there and they rust. Chassis legs. And ideally, if you can get a camera to plug into the end of your phone, one of those scope cameras, you want to be looking down inside this arch. So inside the car, you want to be looking at wear. A key area on a DC5 is these bolsters. The driver's bolster is usually quite bad. That's from getting in and out the car incorrectly. You should be sat on the center of the seat as you get into the car, not actually swing over this part. So this one's really good. Wear on the steering wheel. Obviously this has got an aftermarket steering wheel, but you want to be looking at wear on the gear knob, handbrake, places you're touching, and if that corresponds with the mileage, because you want to be looking if the mileage has been clocked or anything like that. Another thing which is overlooked on the DC5 is actually these trims. They rub on the metal, so they can cause rust as well. Also, the windscreens are really hard to get hold of, so you want to check that there's no damage that's actually pretty severe and can't be repaired. So heading back to the rear of the car again, there's another corrosion area you really need to look at. That's the boot floor and the actual chassis legs. Just like an Evo, they hold water and they will rust. Another thing on an imported car is under seal. If it's been applied thickly, generally it's hiding something. So you want to make sure that that's not too thick. If it is, and you've got a hunch, walk away. Another thing you want to be looking out for on road test is whether the brakes work. These do have Brembos as standard. Obviously there are different ones on this version. So you want to make sure they work and they're not seized. A key way of testing that is after you've been on the road test, just put the back of your hand on the wheel. If one's hotter than the other, that's a good indication. As well as that, the rear calipers seize. That's quite common. So again, back of the hand, make sure that's all good. On the standard wheels, they do oxidize around the spokes, so that's something else you want to look at, and obviously look into the barrel of the wheel, make sure that's all good and there's no damage repairs. So lots of aftermarket intakes require you to actually cut this scuttle panel. That means that this panel is really rare, so you want to look at that, make sure it hasn't been cut in the past, because it actually involves putting a scoop here to put cold air into the engine. So I hope you've enjoyed our buyer's guide on the Honda Integra DC5. These are shooting up in value right now, so now's the time to buy one. If you follow these tips, I think you'll be onto a sure winner, and always go with your gut feeling. If something doesn't feel right, walk away.